All right, lucky. Okay. All right. Okay, good morning. Good morning as people load on here into the Zoom world for our first town hall after a while. Thank you for coming back, and thank you for all of those of you who sent the emails and answered the surveys of wanting to continue our town hall series and a lot of our online virtual learning. So we've got a good, big, strong group pre-registered for a Friday morning in July when the market is as crazy as it is. And we've got a great panel today that's going to talk about how we're working in this crazy seller's market to represent our buyers and sellers and maximize their experience and our relationship. So we'll give everybody a minute to log on. Feel free to say hello. We've got a great panel and we're excited to have you here. So we'll get to, I think the registered group was Kate 4 something. So we'll get to that mid 4s and then see where it ticks up from there. So good morning. All right, seen a lot of people waving their hands saying hello, so thank you. Guess this is a good way to start your day with some tips from some great agents, and probably half of you have already started your days. The way this market is, I think it's that bell rings early and goes off late at night these days. So. Which I guess is better than where we were a few months ago. So it's good to have people having time to jump in here today. All right, good morning, Gina and others. All right. Sort of slowing down on the login, Kate, a little bit, but that's slowly, but we will all right.
Hoby, you'll remind everyone to use the Q&A then when we get started.
No, you will, Kate, because you're the producer of this fine show and make it all.
I feel like they'll listen to you a lot more, but okay.
I don't know how many times we've done this now, these town halls, and for some reason, I'm like technically enabled to connect to Zoom unless so I think every morning, Kate, I can't get on. Well, because we use this email address, not that one, or you're in the wrong Zoom room. I've got too many Zoom accounts, I think. So, but so we're getting close to that number where we'll just get started. So just fill your coffee or your water, or send that last text or email, and we'll get going here. All right, so Kate, I think we're going to jump into it and just let we're at 10:08, so we might as well get going here. So, all right, so Kate, you want to remind everybody about the rules of engagement for our Friday webinars in case they forgot?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us. So kind of same rules, but it's been a minute, so we'll remind everyone. If you have to put anything in the chat that you want everyone to see, just make sure that you put all panelists and attendees. That will not get saved. If you have questions for the panelists, excuse me, please put that in the Q&A. We're also going to take some of these questions from the Q&A and start thinking of some classes and different ways to further the education. So the chat is just for in-meeting communication. The Q&A will be for the panelist questions, and then we will be able to download them, and if we need to refer back,
Great. All right, so we'll get ready here. So good morning, everybody, and welcome. I want to first thing just take a few minutes and just say thank you to everybody throughout Howard Hanna Company. Not only if you're on this webinar today, but throughout the company, everybody from our great real estate agents, our administrative staffs, our employees, corporate staff, IT, relocation, education, marketing, just everybody, regional managers. I'm forgetting so many people, but the whole family of folks that make up the 10,000 agents and employees at Howard Hanna, I want to thank you because this last few months, as we all know, has been crazy for the whole world. But I think that because of the efforts and the dedication that everybody's put into the company, we've been able to really stay strong, ratchet our business, keep growing. And I know that now that all markets as of today are open and we're doing business, I know June was fantastic. We're still getting those final numbers, but it looks like we're going to be up significantly in sales in every market. I don't want to announce those final numbers until they do come back. I know that just anecdotally, talked to Fred Corsi last night, and he said that last week going into the 4th of July, that it was the biggest sales volume week that from the honor roll system that people see, single week that they've ever had in Rochester, whether it be Howard Hanna, Nothnagel before, anything else. So 1 week, single biggest sales volume week. And I can tell you that what we're looking at is we think July's closings will be the biggest and largest closing month in the history of the company, just across the board. Just we've seen that pent up demand, what's pending. So with that, I will say to everybody, stay calm and be patient. If you have those closings, the only thing I can recommend is I know how hard everybody's working. Everybody's working incredibly hard, but make sure you're working productively. Take a few minutes to just plan and organize and make sure you're reviewing what's the status of those deals that are closing, what's the status of the mortgage. Make sure you're over communicating so that you're not getting hit the last week of the month with lots of little fires that you're putting out, that you sort of feel like you have control and you're controlling where you want to be. The other thing is I'd say, please stay safe. We're seeing upticks in the positive cases of the virus. It's causing some of our markets to, I know in Pennsylvania, they've made rules to close restaurants and say you can't serve alcohol. Other states haven't gone there, but it just, the governments are still going to weigh this. So my boys who play high school football, their slogan is wear a mask so I can wear a helmet. So I would say maybe ours should be wear a mask so we can sell houses and list houses, so we don't go back into a fall where we're saying, hey, real estate can't be done. That would just, we've got great momentum. We know we have so many clients that want us to help them right now. So we should make sure we do that. And then the other thing is just in the market today, I want to mention lots of change happening in our world as it is. Lots of change and focus on fair housing, which as it should be and always has been at Howard Hanna Company. We may touch on that a little bit because the group and I discussed that before, but sort of knowing that Helen's working on a group of in the company right now and on how we can better educate ourselves and inform ourselves of how we can improve and make sure we're practicing fair housing as it's meant, that we're not doing anything unintended that harms anybody of race, creed, religion, sexual orientation, whatever it may be, from their aspect of wanting the dream of American home ownership. And then the last thing, because I get everybody from, when they hear the webinars, I get everybody named Hannah saying, hey, pitch this for me, pitch that for me. So I'm not pitching them all. I got Helen on her inclusiveness and diversity. And then Hadi had us send out a survey. He asked that if you, just to clear what it was, he sent a survey about growth. It's a Survey Monkey. We sent it twice. If you haven't had a chance to answer it, if you can take a few minutes, it's probably a 10-minute survey. The reason we asked is at one of our town halls, there were a lot of questions coming into my dad about where we would grow. Should we open in Florida? People saying, I have a second real estate license and maybe, where's Howard Hanna going next? So my dad said, let's create a survey to ask questions to get a little feel of where you may want to go. Where do you have a second real estate license? If you do, where it is, what states, so that he can, in his global world domination plan, sort of think, where should Howard Hanna go next? Where do we already have Howard Hanna agents? So if you get that survey, if you mind doing that. All right. So with that, enough of the infomercials, and we're going to sort of get into it. We've got a great panel today that we're excited to have of agents representing all different markets. I'm going to introduce them in a second. But the theme of the panel is our education department's been great as a collective. They came to me, the whole team, about middle of June, and they sensed how busy the market is. They sense that we're really in a seller's market, that we're in a, really inventory might be ticking up a little bit at Howard Hanna, but we're not seeing it tick up in the model list as a whole. And so sort of saying, how do we make sure from an education standpoint, can we best support all of our agents? So you'll see in the offices, they've done a couple things. One is we've got focus on listings being delivered sort of in at managers meetings and sales meetings on how we can use our tools to help you grow and increase your listing base and overcome objections. And we'll talk a little bit about how do we create more listings based on what's happening in the market today with this group. Secondly is, as a seller's market, we're hearing stories all around about multiple offers, bidding battles, whatever we all may call them in a different market, and how we're managing that, how we're managing it to get our buyers the deal so that they win at the day or they get the home that we're trying to help them achieve to have. And that our sellers, how are we making sure that we're protecting them so they're not having a fall through? So they're not seeing 5 offers come in, accept 1, maybe not looking at the whole term and condition. And then 3 weeks later, that buyer's backing out, deal falling apart. And, you know, how, because that's stress, right? That's a, you know, the level of stress we can have when a deal falls apart and the emotion that's involved by all parties. Like, it's hard enough doing what we do, having to resell a house or explain the emotion and communication. So we're going to talk about how this great group of agents is managing that, is managing communicating with their customers, setting expectations in today's market. So we've got a lot of great questions leading into it. And then you'll see Education's doing some other webinars. I know next week, some folks from Mortgage, Title, and Insurance are going to be on a webinar, right, Kate, where they're going to talk about how you can use strength of the financial service group to bolster your offer and get more deals done. And so they'll talk about that next week. But we've got a lot of great questions leading in. As Kate said, if you have questions for us, please put them in. We'd rather them in the Q&A than the chat so that we can actually download them and send them out to managers and offices. So if you want to follow up or see the questions that were asked, or if we miss one of your questions, we can try to get back to you individually. So with that being said, I'm going to introduce our panel from this morning. And first, but I have Tracy Marks, who's with us. Tracy, just give us a wave. Tracy is with us in Cleveland, Ohio, the North Royalton office, to be specific, North Royalton Parma, because it depends on which day we're using that name. But Tracy's a $12 million producer and a veteran of the company, who's been here as long as me, I think. But
17 years.
There you go. But great, nice to have you, Tracy. Thanks for joining us today. We also have from the Midwest, Jerry Uline from our Ann Arbor office, covering in Michigan. Jerry is a $12 million producer. She and her team in Ann Arbor, and her husband and partnership group. So Jerry, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
You know, from the great state of New York, representing the Rochester market is Jenna Lee Herb, who's with us. Jenna Lee, to give you some perspective, is a $18 million producer and doing one of the just incredible job, and one of the bright lights throughout the whole company, as this whole panel is. And then we'll go a little further south down to Virginia, and we have Jennifer Keenan, and Jennifer is a $6 million producer. Already has closed $6 million this year, and she wanted to let us know because, you know, she just wanted to point out that she also started in 2017. So, you know, we've got Tracy with 17 years and Jennifer starting in 2017, having rapid success. And last but not least, from Pittsburgh, from the Collier office, we have Leanne Mons, and Leanne's an $8 million producer, just continually on the rise, and another one of the great future superstars, as all these future superstars are here. Helen likes to say the agents make up the future, the present, the past. You guys are all part of the future. I'm part of the past. So we're glad that you're all here to share what you're doing in the market. We joked about that last night because, you know, it's been a long time since I sold real estate day to day. And it's been the cycles of real estate I've been able to watch from a management level and think I'm involved, but I've seen everything from a seller's market to an equal market to a housing recession market to now a pandemic market where you weren't allowed to do anything, and to now a crazy seller's market, which is like a bubble brewing because we've been across all of our markets had a shortage of inventory. No matter from Ann Arbor to Virginia, we've had a shortage of inventory for probably 3 to 4 years. Part of that shortage is because we don't see enough new construction like we once did. There's pockets of new construction, but we don't see as many of the mid-sized builders speccing houses, developers, but the cost of new construction has gotten expensive. So we are missing in all of our markets, a real huge subsection. And Virginia may have the most, and maybe the capital region in Albany, but we don't have as much new construction in most of our markets beyond the big national builders, the Ryans, the Pulte's, others. So we're missing a segment there. We've also seen a reduction in inventory because we've had low interest rates, people refinance. You know, we had a lot of people come out of the Great Recession who were in short sale situations and lot of investors into single family houses, buying rental properties, turning them into rentals, and we haven't been able to figure to get those back on the market at where some perceived value. So we've had challenges, and even housing stock at times either being not the right price affordable or a little bit of a dated, and so we've seen the cycle of how important staging is and so forth. But right now, what it looks like is we're in one of the great sellers markets ever. I hear about bidding battles across all price points. I heard about a bidding battle on a $2 million house taking place last night. Don't know if it came together, but 3 offers on a $2 million house being negotiated. I mean, we're seeing them on $150,000 houses and $400,000 houses. So we know right now there's a shortage of inventory, and we may touch on how this great group is trying to increase their inventory. But really the focus is, okay, shortage of inventory, tremendous buyer activity, low interest rates, a pent-up spring market that wasn't allowed to buy because of restrictions, and now is in the market on top of, I think, a lot of homeowners who were in their home for a long time who were saying, here's what I need to improve, here's what I want differently, so creating impulse. So we're gonna get into it. I'm sort of gonna raise these questions and whoever wants to jump in, but let's talk about buyer representation first. Let's talk about the buyers you're working with. And you're working with a buyer. They called you last week. They said, all right, I want to buy a home. I'm looking for a home. I'm start with Jenna Lee, $300,000 in Rochester. They call you last week. You meet with them. Starting off with, what are the expectations in today's market you're saying that you're setting early on with that buyer? What are some of the things that you've always done that you're re-enhancing, or what are the things that you're added to your repertoire because of the tightness of the market? So Jenna Lee, you want to start, and then I'll come through others with questions too.
Sure. So one of the biggest things, I think, and you just hit on it, is setting their expectations. I like to have a good hour, sometimes it's longer, meeting with buyers and with sellers, but with talking.
Jenna Lee, I don't mean to interrupt. Can you speak a little bit louder? I think for some people it's really soft.
Sure. So with buyers, I think it's super important to set expectations and have a long meeting to talk about what the market is like, in the $300,000 price range or whatever range they are in. It's important for them to know what they're walking into. And when I'm meeting with a buyer, I'm telling them that it's going to be disappointing and there's going to be frustration and it's going to be hard because it is. And, I want this to be, I do want it to be an enjoyable experience for them, but I also don't want them to be taken back when it's hard. So we're talking about, going in at asking or over asking price, and how much over asking price, what percentages are we looking at in that price range? We're talking a lot about home inspections and if they should waive. And I never recommend that they waive them, but I do let them know that sometimes that's a differentiator, because I don't want them to find out after the fact that they didn't get it because somebody else waived a home inspection, and they come to me and say, well, we didn't know we could do that. We would have done that. Some people think home inspections are mandatory. And I always tell them you have to be really comfortable to do that. But I want them to at least know about it, and I want to set that expectation for them.
Right.
Making the mortgage contingency, if they need one, look as clean as it can. As much down as they possibly can scrape together is what we're going for. Big deposits, any of those things, and just letting them know up front what they need to do to win a house in this market. And also letting them know that we probably aren't going to win the first few.
Okay, good. That's good to level that expectation, because I think that's where disappointment comes in, that some buyers don't realize how tight the market is. And you might not win the first two just because they themselves may not be ready to jump with urgency or listen to you on where you have to go to price, so it's building that trust capacity. Tracy, same question. Anything that, I'm sure a lot of the same things, but anything that either that you didn't hear Jenna Lee say that you're doing, or something that you've added to your repertoire, or putting more emphasis on, I guess I'd say, with your buyers, setting that expectation?
Well, everything Jenna Lee said holds true. The better educated the buyers are, including the heartbreak that they may have to endure before they finally do get the home. I try to emphasize that, you know, things do happen for a reason, and that the one that they end up with is going to be the one that they were meant to have, and sometimes that helps. They can, you know, have that benefit of hindsight and look back, but just preparing them for it, if it requires doing a buyer's market analysis ahead of time for that price range that they're in, and just showing them what's going on in the market. Sometimes they're very well educated before they even come to me, but it never hurts to just reemphasize.
Leanne, anything you'd add?
I mean, I would just add that, especially if it's, you know, new to the market and, you know, it just came on, I would say, listen, to set their expectations, it's going to go over asking. There's going to be multiple offers. So, you know, we need to go in strong for sure.
Okay. Jennifer?
It's pretty much the same here, educating the buyers, walking them through the process and explaining the process to them is extremely important. Talking about a multiple offer situation. You know, some will send me a list of properties they want to see because that tends to be more the norm. And, you know, you say, well, these are available, these aren't available. And you talk about inventory and how that's vacillating in the market and educating them.
Good. And finally, on that question, Jerry, anything that you'd add to that basic setting expectations, new buyer you're working with, anything you may to be doing? Your team.
I'll just add for us, and there may be some other Michigan agents on that have a similar experience. It's all about customizing it to that particular buyer. I mean, I can sell in Ann Arbor, which I know may be needing the education of appraisal bridge, inspection, clarification, escalation clause. But then if I'm selling in a rural area, I can customize it maybe to a different style needed based on how quickly things are going. The other thing is that's worth mentioning, and it's due to the emotional temperature environment of everyone, and that is to minimize the drama and very clear communication. Anything you can do to protect yourself from buyer and seller interaction and or buyer agent, seller agent, and keeping things as smooth as possible will benefit everyone.
Great. So I'm going to build off of that a little bit, that expectation with a couple questions that have come in and then some questions that's triggered in my mind. Just staying with that, because I think that's important for everybody out there, that we pick up customers, you know, in a lot of different ways, relationships, sphere, postcards, you know, past customers. One question that came out, okay, this market's moving so quickly, and it's moving so fast, and buyers today have, you know, they've got so many different sources to look for houses. A question that did come in is that how are you, anybody might share, because it's moving so fast, how are you managing your buyer to get them to sit down and talk through things prior to just putting them in your car or meeting them at houses? I mean, I know that's always a challenge, but you know, a buyer calls you, a buyer emails you on a listing, whatever it may be, a friend calls, you know, and they want to go see now. And I heard a lot of you say, well, the first meeting I try to sit down. How are you managing that when everybody wants it, the hurry up, give it to me now type attitude? So, Jerry, you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I can say, Hoby, I do, sometimes I make an exception of a one-time, a quick showing depending upon the client that calls in. Again, if it's a referral from a sphere, because we don't, by rule, take anybody out unless they're absolutely pre-approved and ready to go. So the other thing is, what I've noticed is through COVID and the pandemic, my buyers want to slow down a little bit. They want the information. There's a lot of fear in the market and in just human interaction in the world right now. So kind of playing off that with the importance of the things that we can teach them before we hit the market and the value of that. And they seem to appreciate, especially first-time home buyers. There's so much to teach them. I mean, there's so much value.
So Jerry, to that point, and then I'll come around to others just to build off of that. You mentioned that your process is that you won't show somebody a house without a pre-approval and getting through that process. And, you know, I will say, and thank you to you and your team, that for, I don't know, like the last 4 years, I don't know how many years, Jerry and her group have been the One Team, One Dream award winner supporting the mortgage, title, and insurance companies. They call it a triple play when they do it all. So thank you. But so I know you're using Howard Hanna Mortgage as part of that process.
Absolutely.
But, you know, I guess I'm assuming that in today's market, everybody's getting that pre-approval or 90% of the time. But the question would be, okay, that same buyer who calls, who isn't approved with Howard Hanna Mortgage or First Priority or, you know, Town Mortgage, we have different names in different markets. What's your policy when the person comes in and says, I'm already approved by XYZ Bank, whether it's a name bank that you know, or whether it's a lender that you've never heard of before? Are you accepting that pre-approval? And generally raised your hands. I'm just gonna come back to you, Jerry, but generally with like this, so I'm gonna go to it. Okay.
So I just wanted to, you know, when somebody calls me and says, oh, usually it's a referral. We were referred to you by so-and-so. We'd like to go see this house. I think one of the important things I do for a number of reasons is you take control of that person. Great, I'm so excited. I'd love to work with you. You know, they were great clients. The first thing we need to do is sit down, whether it's at my office or via Zoom call, whatever is your comfort level, and go over the process. Once we do that, maybe we could, you know, meet Wednesday at noon and then go look at the house Wednesday at 1.
Okay.
So I think first taking back control and setting that expectation, and then I think Bob Mays, if he's on the call, he would say this much better than I ever could, but he told me once that I think, what did he say, 2 hours in the office up front saves like 15 hours in the field later. So I think it's super important to have a process for that and stick to it.
So that's great. Jerry, because I asked tonight, and then generally I think that's great, and I love that Bob Mays quote. That, because I will say that I'm going to let Jerry talk about her part, because that is a tough thing. You're all, you know, at that level of success in your career, and you've built up your business and you're growing it on a trajectory. I think for some of our newer agents that are listening, that's like that hard thing that, you know, you're trying to build your business and that person calls, whether it's on opportunity time or whether it's from a target marketing that you did, and they're a brand new agent's like, I got a buyer, I just got to do whatever they say. And no matter what our training is, they sort of are so anxious. So Jerry, I'm going to come to you with like, okay, so on that, what's your policy? And then also, what advice would you give agents out there who haven't had a sale yet, that aren't doing $12 million worth of business, who are saying, I'm just running out to do whatever the buyer says? What advice would you give them to slow down?
Thank you. And over the years, Hoby, once you do it so many times, you create scripts in your head, right? So we have, our team has a strong partnership and relationship with the mortgage team here, Teresa Taylor and Josie a lot. And so for me, it's easy because the first thing I do is when they say, well, I have a lender, and then I walk through it and I say, okay, well, what do you qualify for? Well, I'm not sure. And then that slows them down, because if you're FHA versus conventional, then that's a whole different animal here as to what condition the house needs to be. So as you're educating them and fact finding on who your lender is, the second thing that I'm very proud of, and I've done very successfully over the years, is I ask 5 times for the finance business, literally. If I don't, I say, when they say they have a lender, I talk about the second opinion. Then if I can't get them then through the process, it rears its head. It just does. And so I'm constantly trying to bring people into our core service process, because I truly in my heart believe that that's the best thing for them, is to use all of our in-house services so we can keep it together. Especially I found that through the whole pandemic, real estate, mortgage, title, insurance, home warranty. I have a whole script that I tell to people. So once, I think the experience slows people down when you start talking about maybe terms they've never heard of and why it would be important to let us do the second opinion. And we've had a lot of successful with our team on that. And we call it a Hannah Slam, all 5.
So I'm going to take it from the financing and come down though. Leanne, I'll throw a question to you that just came in, which I think is psychology of agents. Maybe it was more of a statement, which was, when homes are selling very quickly, like they are in this market, taking the usual time for scheduling a meeting in anywhere from a day to a week can lose the home they want. Now, I think that question comes from, I don't sense that the buyers you're working with that you've had that introductory call, which I'm going to sense, you know, that doesn't always mean 2 hours in the office is generally said. That's the ideal, but it could be 30 minutes on a phone call with a 30-minute Zoom pre-approval, just knowing where we stand, setting expectations. You know, I think what I would say is that if on that statement is that if you're, yes, the buyers you're working with, that you know you're there, that you've got to be responsive and reactive to them and manage that process. But I worry about the person who just is calling out of nowhere that you've never met before, that's a complete stranger, that is, hey, I've got to see this now. So, you know, so I'm going to go to Leanne. So Leanne, you know, financing is one big thing, having that communication. Anything else you'd say, even if that's a buyer who calls on your house, anything you're doing from a precaution to make sure that that buyer really can afford it and represent it? Because I also know that many sellers today just don't want everybody traipsing through their home. There is a fear. So how are you addressing that when it comes about?
So I actually tell them that the seller is requiring a pre-approval. So if I have a buyer call me and say, hey, I want to go see this house, it was just listed, let's go at 3 o'clock today. Typically I'll call Kat, the lender in my office, and I say, hey, can you hurry up and give me a pre-approval? She sends it out, and then we go show them the house. And then if they want to proceed further to make an offer, then, you know, we have the discussion of the terms of the offer. But yeah, I won't show anything either without a pre-approval.
Yeah, so I think that's important. And I just want to say, because not only that, but also safety. I think that the market is hot, and yes, we want to get the home sold, but we got to have a little bit of control, right? Like, who are we meeting at a home? What's their background? Where'd they come from? Just because they say they want to buy the house. And yes, we want to service all of our clients, but this is a big transaction. And if they do lose it and you've never met them before, go back to that Bob Maves comment. If you've never had that little bit of upfront time, who do you know you're representing? How do you know you make sure you get a deal together? So I think that is important that you're layering in. I'm glad to hear everybody's laying in the pre-approval. It seems that one of the things that's come out of this is that is much more commonplace or expectation of a seller, which we'll talk about sellers' expectations, that people aren't just opening their doors much to just anybody who says that they can afford the house. You know, that there is a process. So I'm going to switch to a specific question. I'm going to come up to Jennifer on this and then sort of come around. So the other question is, in that expectation and the crazy market and sense of trust and loyalty, you're getting the pre-approvals, you're sitting down trying to counsel. The next question I would say is that, what are you, is anybody getting exclusive buyer agency contract signed? Not an agency disclosure that says I represent you when I go show this, but actually listing the buyer, like saying in that expectation, how soon do you want to buy? Well, in the next 3 months. Okay, I'm going to have you sign this agreement that you're exclusively working with me, so on and so forth. And I know those agreements exist in every state. They may have some variances of what the forms look like. But Jennifer, are you yourself, have you started practicing more exclusive buyer agency, or is it something you're newer to the business? Is it something you've always practiced? How are you addressing that in today's market?
Currently, I'm not, mostly because I'm trying to grab the buyers as I can, and that is something that I definitely need to work on. That it would be one of my weaker spots, but I haven't lost any buyers either.
Okay.
So it's all about building relationship and being that person that provides information and resource and developing that relationship. It's all about relationship.
That's great. Thank you. Tracy, are you doing anything with buyer agency or seeing an uptick even from other agents in the market?
No, I've never used a buyer agency. Again, building the relationships, and knock on wood, have not lost any buyers either.
Okay, good. Any of the other panelists or any of you working with exclusive buyer agency? Jerry?
Yeah, Hoby, I'm a strong advocate in the opposite direction. And maybe it was just because I came in to this industry with a husband that was a manager, and I would not take anyone out without exclusive buyers agency. And I've been practicing it since day one. And I have to say, because I've been doing it since day one, I'm pretty good at it. It don't make a big deal. People sign it. I got them under contract, and I want 6 months, because I don't want the opposite effect, which is I don't want to get burnt out on people going with somebody else because I failed to do that. So for me, it's a really strong, important piece of my career.
That's great. Jenna Lee, anything you're seeing in terms of that buyer agency?
I actually typically don't get it signed, but it is part of my buyer package.
Okay.
I go over it with them when my initial consultation with them. I talk about what it is. I talk about how I get paid, you know, what my expectation is. And what I always tell them is, before I have you sign this, I'd like to make sure that I feel like I can help you and you feel like I can help you. So maybe at our third meeting, I might bring it out to ask you to sign it at that point. I have a couple of things. Sometimes I just don't have anybody sign it and I kind of forget about it. Sometimes the people are there and they say, well, we already know we're going to use you, so can we just sign it now? So I'm talking to them. It's kind of like I'm setting the expectation of what the buyer agency agreement is. And then, I did have one just recently that I had showed them a couple houses. They ended up finding something on their own, and they are in a sort of a desperate situation. They've got to get out of their rental and buy a house. And they called me and said, we found this house. I said, just buy it. Just get a contract, go buy it. You have to get out of your rental. And they were so appreciative. That happened, I think, 2 weeks ago. And just yesterday, I went on a listing appointment that was a referral from them. And I'm pretty sure I'll get that listing. So, it's not always about that transaction for me or for that buyer. It's about the relationship and delivering a service and having it have long-term effect.
I think Leanne, do you have a comment on that? You look like you were about to jump in. No?
No, okay, sorry.
Okay, it's good. Well, I do think, that you're all capturing, so everybody out there, that the successful agents is that discussion, discovery, relationship, trust. I do throw out the buyer agency just because I think that it is something that, and it's hard in a market like this that's frantic and busy and it's not the norm. And you're like, well, if nobody else is offering it, how do I offer it? Easier for Jerry. She did it as she started and it's built in as sort of her comfort and process. I do think it's something we should look at because I think we put a lot of time and effort into those buyers. And sometimes we built the loyalty and sometimes all it takes is that one or two times where you built the loyalty and they call you and they can't get back to you right. You can't get back to them right away because you're busy and they end up buying something from somebody else. And it's like, they send you flowers and like, that's going to make it up. But, but it just, I would think about that as you develop your business. But that'll take to that transition. Okay. So you've got your buyers. We have, as a company, developed a lot of technology and tools to try to interact with that buyer and let them know what's happening in the market, keep them connected, different things like Real Scout and some of the Engage CRM products and products you may have on your own. Are there any, are you using, and this even flows into other, not just the proprietary tech stack that Howard Hanna has, but are you using any other technology in terms of either communication or keeping connected to your agents, to your customers, that's either changed or you've always done, but maybe you're using it more because of how the market is right now? Anybody have anything they'd share there?
I'm using presentations a lot, and getting this information out to buyers ahead of time so that they have something they can refer back to. I have the whole buyer presentation already set. I just have to tweak a few things in there and can send it out along with samples of all the documents that they're going to be presented with. All of that can be sent out digitally. And
is anybody, before you show a house, is anybody sending through presentations the homes you're going to show that include driving directions and some information so it's there on their phone digitally rather than showing up with the handouts or flyers for the homes? Is anybody using that feature that was launched about a year ago? Did any of you know that feature existed?
Yeah.
Just curious, yeah. Because I've heard some people who are using it because it's like, hey, here's what we're going to look tomorrow. It comes through presentations, it's laid out in a nice format, and then they can start building dialogue around selling neighborhood and community, not just the house itself. So it's a good feature that I just that might be out there.
Yeah, for relocation buyers, it's especially helpful. Those that already know the communities.
Any other technology pieces? I guess one is that I've heard anecdotally that some buyers, and it also at the height of the sort of coronavirus slowdown, we were doing a lot of virtual showings where it might have been just even like Zoom screen sharing, where somebody's looking on our website. You as an agent would also be going through houses and narrowing down rather than go out and look at 12 houses on a Saturday, narrowing down. Here's the 3 we're going to go see tomorrow morning and pre-discussing. And I know people were doing that, and it seems like on traffic, we've seen a little drop off of that. I was curious if that would become part of the new norm of sort of, you know, not just working with your buyer in the car showing houses, but sort of interacting from a digital aspect. Anybody doing that or seeing a change in that in the market?
Definitely
Yeah.
recommending that we do what's, I think it's the 3. Have you driven by? Have you done a virtual tour? And then the 3rd would be to see it. So definitely, I can imagine all the other agents are trying to do that as well. Just minimizing contact in the home is still very important.
That's great. Anybody else with anything? I mean, it could be any technology that you're using differently since the virus hit, or using more.
I actually just had one last week where, I mean, it took 2 hours and it was, you know, through FaceTime, but he ultimately ended up making an offer on the home and getting the home, but without even seeing it. So yeah, that's worked for me for sure.
Great. All right.
Okay. Hoby,
Yes. Yes.
can I go back to your question about tools we're using as well? I can say that, and this is just a plug for our platforms that Howard Hanna has been working on so hard. We have made an effort since the beginning of the year, and especially through some downtime in COVID, to try to incorporate everything together. Real Scout, Engage, Open to Close, everything working for us to help best work for our clients. I mean, the other thing that, and I'm sure people can relate to whatever their style is, but even the old school idea of keeping a board with people's names and just thinking people first. That's part of my system. So I just wanted to kind of go back to that question.
Okay, great. Great.
I've just started using the app, so I'm very new at it, but
Okay.
I'm starting to share it with some customers and they seem to like it. And
That's
but
good.
I'm very, very new.
Okay, that's all right. That's good. I mean, it is very new. We just launched it, so it's very new. The app is new. So I'm going to move on to sort of the conversation to the same dialogue around sellers. But before I do, just looking at some of the comments, somebody anonymous, and I love when people tell me who they are so we can make sure we follow up with you, but anonymous is fine. But please clarify that every market is different and that some markets, the buyer agency is required for making an offer. What I just want to clarify, yeah, that's all true, but what I was talking about is exclusive buyer agency, just so everybody out there knows that there are differences. Some markets you have to say you're representing the buyer, or there's a dual agency. There are disclosures in almost every market of who you represent in the transaction, who the seller represents, and I completely understand that. What I was talking about, which is not the same thing. You know, a lot of times that I represent the buyer, it's on that house that I'm making an offer in during the negotiation. Exclusive buyer agency is when you really are listing a buyer and you're saying for a period of time that buyer is going to have loyalty to me and I'm going to have loyalty to them, just like a seller. And so even if that buyer bought new construction, walked into a Ryan Homes subdivision and said, I'm buying a house, and they didn't go with you, contractually, they owe you the commission. You know, so that they have to realize that the loyalty is so much that if you don't get your commission, you know, that it's, so there could be all different names, but the generality around NAR, doesn't matter what it's called in each market, the generality in NAR is that it's exclusive buyer representation. It's sort of, that's what they see it as. You actually are listing the buyer. And even to the point that if you get a discount commission from somebody and you put in there that your buyer agency fee is 3%, on a disc, if somebody's only offering 2.5%, in all terms of contract, that buyer would be responsible to pay you that 0.5%, or us, the company. And then we could say, well, you know, it is typically 3%, but 2.5% for this house, I'll waive that. That's your negotiation decision with you and your manager and so forth. So that's what I want to do. But let's flip to sellers for a minute, because we talked about buyers and then expectation. Then there's the sellers, because the sellers, you know, it's a little bit of expectation multiply. Let's get at the listing appointment itself. Let's sort of start there, if we could, that you're walking in on a listing appointment this afternoon. The seller is reading and hearing and that it's a great seller's market. They're seeing something on CNBC this morning that the June numbers are great and prices have increased, and they're reading something in the local newspaper or a blog post or an agent saying how hot the market is. So you sit there right then and there, and at the same time, you've got to demonstrate when you're there that you can get them the most amount of money, more than they could get on their own, right? Because sometimes the challenge of a seller's market, and when we start saying how hot the market is that a homeowner decides that, hey, I can save the commission and try to sell. So you're there giving them value. How do you set an expectation that you can get them the most amount of money and that you'll represent them and service them to that degree, you know, without giving away like the whole, all the, you know, giving away the cow for the milk type attitude, and let them say, oh, thanks for the meeting, Jennifer, and then you find out they list themselves. So we'll start with Jennifer. When you're on that listing presentation, what expectation are you setting in terms of today's market, and before you get them to bidding battle, just in terms of pricing and why they should list their house with you?
Well, it's again, it's the whole package. Right now, we're finding a lot of competition from limited agency. We're finding a lot of people who want to go FSBO. So it's bringing that marketing piece to them. When you're talking about homes of distinction, you're talking about a much wider network of marketing and availability, and you're talking about open houses, you're talking about just all of the marketing that you bring to the picture and all of the work that you do to bring buyers to the property.
Great, that's great. Anybody else with thoughts on that, with the, in terms of the what you, at that table, at that kitchen table, talking about the listing that you're expecting?
Well, I can say that from the coming into COVID and coming out of the not showing, that we took the time to increase our virtual platform. So we now have Matterport as an option, whereas we didn't have it before. Something dramatic happened in our market as far as coming soon's being changed. That used to be a huge part of our platform. So we have to evolve. So it's adapt or die. So we adapted to, now we do hybrid open houses. So we'll do part of the open house virtual, part in person. But just to say, I think it was Jennifer that was speaking, same idea. It's about exposure. It's about showing all your benefits and value. We used to do a marketing calendar that comes into play depending upon the customized listing presentation. But I think right now, because I think we all saw a shift coming, and whether this is the shift, being a strong agent or team is so important right now. You're showing your value and your benefits.
That's great. Jenna Lee.
I actually just want to add, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead. No, please.
No, I just want to add that as far as, you know, if it's a FSBO or what they're going to decide to do, but I think understanding the contract as far as, you know, how much hand money to expect, the pre-approval of the buyer, if it's, you know, a legit buyer, and then also the terms, if there's a home sale contingency. There's so many, I believe, sellers out there that don't really understand it. So explaining that to them, I think, is definitely a pro for us.
Right. Jenna Lee or Tracy, do you have anything to add there?
I agree. Sometimes just explaining the entire process to somebody who's thinking about doing it on their own can frighten them a little bit. I got a listing just recently, but also, you know, showing them how you're going to be able to get them more money, showing them your sales history, that, you know, everything you've listed in the past, you know, 3-4 months has gone in a couple of days over asking price, and you just showing them that you can represent them, get them more money in their pocket. For FSBOs, that's typically their motivation is what they're going to put in their pocket. And if you can show them that you're going to get them more than they can get on their own, why wouldn't they pay you a commission?
Emily?
Yep, I think it's exposure. So, sitting at the table, you know, my script, I guess, is always that I cast a wide net. We don't know whether your buyer is going to be coming from the internet, the TV show, the newspaper pullout, or money guarantee. And, you know, we say we don't know where they're going to come from, but wherever it is, we want to be there, and we want to make sure that we're there. And that's how we kind of can set ourselves apart from our competitors, is saying, like, we have all of these things that we're going to be using to expose your house to the market, and that's how the more exposure, the more people, the more offers, the more money. And then it's also setting expectations, just, you know, like what was said, as far as there's no selling the house is the first part, getting to closing is almost more difficult, and that's the second part. So that's the part that takes a lot of skill and negotiation and management that they might be afraid or not know how to do on their own.
Okay. So that's great. So, but, you know, just like that buyer, that expectation of the market, the marketing, and because it's a seller's market, I'm not taking too much out. I'm going to shift in that same vein a little bit to pricing at the listing, which does go back to, a little bit of, strategy. I guess I've always believed that pricing is more of an art than a science. And it's because some people who know me, like I know a lot of agents don't like to even take me on listing appointments because they think I'll be too aggressive with the price, but anymore. But I am a believer that you have to look at the psychology of why somebody's selling a home. Just because they say they're selling their home, it varies. If somebody says, I've already bought another house, I'm transferring out of town, this is an estate and it's vacant. I've started building a house and it's going to be done in 2 months. I'm going through a divorce. I being transferred. Those are like real motivating factors that make us sort of look at price and price strategy. I think to say, all right, then what's your expectation of how quickly you want to? Now I know things are flying off the market. I heard this from everybody last night, like in 2 or 3 days. And if it's not priced perfectly, or if it's a little aggressive, maybe it takes 30 to 60 days, which is like, wow, that's not 6 or 9 months or a year. But I guess in pricing, knowing it can vary, right? Somebody says, I need to sell in 30 days. You're sort of going to look at the comps. You're going to look at the value. But comps are tough because we haven't had a lot sell in the last couple months or close. We know there's deals that are closing, and you've heard the story in your offices about, wow, that house on that street sold for 600. Nothing ever sold above 520. You hear those stories. We all do. So in getting to pricing, when you're talking to your sellers and they know it's a hot market, how much are you challenging the market with price? What comes into effect? And I'm always a believer, okay, go challenge the market, see how much more we can get. What's the reason? Now before I have anybody answer the challenge the market, Leanne gave an interesting anecdote to almost the reverse in a way, last night about a house that she maybe priced at the bottom of the range because she felt that it was going to drive price up. So without steering the thumb, so Leanne, what did you do there?
So with that particular home, I comped it out at like 520. So, and I knew that they were eager to sell. So I was thinking, okay, let's get, a pool of buyers, under the 500 mark. So, or ultimately we would end up with the same, number. So instead of listing at 520, I went to 499 to get, under the 500 mark, and then ended up with multiple offers and ended up selling for 521. So I think that works.
No,
I find that sweet spot though.
So that buyer, seller out of curiosity, what was their reason for sale?
They were moving to South Carolina.
Okay, so they had a real strategy. They were relocating, so they bought into that. They bought into that. Hey, I think I can get you more going at 499 that rather than being at 510 or 520 or whatever it was, because of here's where the market is, and we might lose time. Did you have that dialogue with them, and they bought into that?
Oh yeah, for sure. I said we can list it at 520. You're not going to have as many buyers or a pool of buyers, or we can kind of go under 499 and we'll have a much wider range, and then hopefully have multiple offers. And it worked.
Out of curiosity, did you and it's okay if the answer is no, because we have launched so many new tools and programs for everybody under the sun, technology here in the last few months. When you talked about that pool of buyers, did you use buy side in any way to show, hey, if we price it here, here's how many more buyers are already in the Howard Hanna system? Or did you just go off your general gut of the market and knowing the neighborhood?
I just went off my gut.
Okay. All right. Okay. That's fine. That's fine. I said, be honest though. But I would put a push that buy side, by the way, not only goes with your gut, but if you use that and you get familiar with it, there is the ability to show, okay, if we're at this price point, here's how many buyers are active looking in the last 30 or 60 days. And if we bring it price down, the buyer pool actually goes deeper. Now, we know there are only Howard Hanna clients and customers that are registered through our system, but since, especially in your market where we have such a strong market share, it's really a good depth of the market so as you do that just might be, or anybody does that, just might be another validating piece for that seller who's sort of saying, really, there's more buyers, are you sure? And you can look there, and if there are, just within our own company, you can say, hey, and that's, if we're selling 30% of the homes in the market or 50% of the homes in the market, that's a good indicator. So just that's out there. Going to the other side of pricing, anybody seeing that you're challenging a little bit higher, you're looking at what you've heard, might not be comps that have sold, you're looking at your comparable data, but you also know what's pending and what's in the market. Eddie, generally you're nodding your head. Anything you're doing unique with pricing right now in this market?
I had one, I comped it out at about 530, 535, I think, and beautiful house. And I said to my folks, I knew that they really, they had put a lot of money into it. They hadn't been there for very long. So I said, I think in this market we might be able to push up a little bit and see what we can do. So we went. I thought it would sell at 535. We listed it at 545 and ended up getting 540.
Okay, good.
And they were thrilled.
Good. So sort of setting that expectation that we're at that listing appointment, we're talking about where price could be and some variance, which some good ideas there. And I think how important that is when you're at the seller's table, making sure you're getting the listing, setting the expectation with a buyer. So now let's get into a little bit of the negotiation, the actual, we're in multiple offers, and we can free flow whether your perspective is buyer representation, do differently versus the seller, if it's all the same. So you set that expectation, it's a tight market, and you're presenting your offer, you're in a bidding battle. So I guess your first go, I'll just go around the horn. I'll start with Jared. One point that you would give to everybody, you're in multiple offer situations, you're presenting an offer, whether you're representing the buyer or seller, other than price, what's the one item that you really accentuate and say to your buyer, you've got to do this for me, or even to a seller, hey, let's go back and look at this term or condition. We all look at price, right? And every customer looks at price first, but there's all other parts of the transaction that are at play. So Gary, you get to go first. That one thing that other than price that you pay attention to, on either side of the coin.
If I understand your question correctly, appraisal bridge.
Appraisal, okay.
Second most important thing, in my mind. Appraisal bridge.
What do you mean by the bridge?
That the buyer is willing to cover any shortfall of an appraisal up to X amount. In other words, if we got $150,000 house, and I only got comps up to 140, the ideal buyer is someone that's willing to come to cash to close.
Okay. All right. So you're already pre-negotiating into your offers, either asking for it as representing the seller or representing the buyer, you're putting it in there to make their offer look stronger, is that knowing that you might be higher than recent comps that you're finding, but you also know that there's pendings out there and things that change. You're actually putting language into the contract that says that your customer or the buyer in this sense will bridge the gap if the appraisal is off. All right. So coming back to that, if I understand that, is it up to a certain amount or is it just any variance?
It depends on the buyer and it depends on the price of the home. So working both sides of that, Hoby. So for example, the last seller that we had multiple offers, we educated them up front. In your price range, we may not be able to get a strong appraisal bridge, but if we get 5 offers, the one that gives it to us is probably going to be the best offer because they have that extra cash to bring to close. And on a buyer's side, having that conversation up front and making sure, it just positions your buyer as to how strong they can be in writing the offer. Appraisal bridges in Ann Arbor, Michigan market are so important.
Okay, good. I just want to clarify that term. I've never heard that term, appraisal bridge, which is a great idea. And thanks for sharing that. And maybe, I know that some of the questions for everybody is on that there's requests for some scripting and some language. So Kate may follow up with the panelists at your request, get some scripting, get some of the language that you may use on the appraisal bridge, just to share through the education department to other markets, just as we create that innovation of what might be working in Michigan and see how it could be used in another market, or maybe we already are and just has a different term. So I'll go over to Jennifer. Other than price and now the appraisal bridge, something that you look for either to strengthen your offer on the buy side or request as representing the seller in this market?
Seller paid closing costs.
Okay, good. And are you seeing that up to a certain price point or?
Strangely enough, we're seeing them up in higher price points. Usually it was something that I would say up to about $500,000 you would possibly see. VA contracts, you see a lot of that.
So I'm sorry, so you said seller paid closing costs.
Mm-hmm.
So in this market, that the seller's market, where the seller holds the keys, the seller, you're seeing buyers ask for sellers to pay their closing costs, and the seller saying yes.
It's negotiated. It depends.
Just surprises me. I mean, it's a great point, but it just surprises me. I would think that there may be more buyers saying, I'll pay the seller's closing cost outside of commission because they want the house so bad in a tight market. That's interesting, you know, so, okay, that's good. That's good. I like it. Jenna Lee.
Two that I've come across. One that I'm using, hopefully now to get a deal, is the home warranty. So my clients decided to waive a home warranty because it seems like that's one of the differentiators. The one we lost last, of 16 offers, 10 of them waived a home inspection. So we kind of know that in this price range, you have to do that to get the house.
Okay.
So instead, they're buying a warranty, and then Mike McKenzie, the guy that does our warranty stuff, he said that he needs language to add to the contract that says buyer will pay for the home warranty and the seller will benefit from coverage from now until closing.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's the first one. And then the other thing is a large deposit. And from a seller's perspective, I had one about a year ago, and they did like a $10,000 non-refundable deposit. And that was like, you know, nasty.
Okay, that's great. I like that. Non-refundable really shows your meaning. I'll come to Tracy in a second. I told just for everybody out there, I told the panel last night that, like, because it's so long since I've been day-to-day on a contract, but when I started my career in real estate, and it was in our Squirrel Hill office in Pittsburgh, the agents explained to me that you better get 5% earnest money on a deal. That was the norm in the 90s. So I don't care if it was $300,000 or $500,000 or $100,000, it was 5% of purchase price was what you were to collect and deposit as earnest money. Actually, in Pittsburgh, they call it hand money. And as I was told by the agents that mentored me, I said, why do you call it hand money? What's that mean? And they said, well, it's supposed to feel like your hand is cut off if you lose it. So that's sort of that's that reference point there. So, you know, I do think that what's happened over time is we've taken less deposit money, earnest money, whatever we call it in the market, because it's just there to hold the deal together. And we've been writing too often what I think are options, because, you know, if you're a $300,000 house and you have $1,000 of earnest money, you know, and you don't like that you have to change out 5 GFI plugs and the seller's not willing to do it, it's a $300,000 house to lose $1,000 to move on because you don't like what you see in a home inspection or something else comes on. It's really just an option for the next 60 days to look at the deal, or 30 days. So I do think even in a tight market, the more commitment, whether it's, if it's, non-return earnest money or just a bigger number, but you have to point it out. You have to point it out to your seller how important that is. And as a buyer's agent, you have to point out to the buyer, you know, that in your offer how important that is. So good point there. Tracy, your one thing that hasn't been hit yet?
Well, if I'm working with a buyer in multiple offers or anticipating multiple offers, writing the strongest offer that you possibly can. You know, for some that's easy. That, you know, they're paying cash. That's going to be a differentiator right there for a lot of sellers looking at it. But then, you know, you have the buyer that is unfortunately FHA, not to disparage FHA, but they're FHA, they need closing costs, and helping them to get the house too, writing the strongest offer with the least amount of contingencies. Working with the seller, I mean, recently we got in a multiple offer situation as well, an offer where the buyer offered to pay the first $500 of any inspection, you know, issue that came up, and that was a differentiator for in that situation. And I explained it to my seller that a buyer that's willing to do that is not going to, you know, pick apart the house. You know, they're trying to reassure you that they're only doing the inspection for their own education. Yeah,
that's very good. And that home inspection is huge, because how often do we renegotiate it? You know, that's a big deal. Leanne.
Yeah, so that's my go-to when I'm representing the buyer is, you know, I'll have a conversation with them, and if the home, you know, it's not that old, I'll say, you know, how comfortable are you with doing electing inspections, but doing for informational purposes only? And I've had extreme success with it. I mean, I don't want to jinx it, but a lot of the offers have been accepted that way.
Good. So yeah, home inspection is huge. I'll ask this question on home inspections, and are you seeing more, just by raise of hands, are you seeing more and more offers being presented, whether they're yours or ones that are coming in on your listings, that are removing the home inspections? Or is it, you know, an uptick from where you were a year ago? So, and even participants can raise their hand as they just on this one. Do you think, so in San Francisco, people don't put a house on the market until the seller does the home inspection. Totally different than how the rest of the world. Actually, in San Francisco, sellers pay for the home inspection up front, and they also make sure all the point of sale inspections are done as a municipality. So when they bring a house on the market, it's not even, you know, it's not just that all the marketing pieces are done. It's not that there's some staging done and the times of staging. It's also, here's the home inspection, here's the point of sale, here's the report that it's all done. And they sell the homes as is when they have a pre-inspection. It's the buyer, the tradition there is the buyer choice. If you want to go have a home inspection, by all means you can, but you can't come back and renegotiate. You can do that for your own peace of mind. I'm sharing that the reputable home inspector just did this 30 days before I put it on the market. And they've always had, aside from it being a crazy market in San Francisco and, you know, obviously fluid, they've always had the lowest days on market as most metropolitan areas, because once they get a contract signed, they're not renegotiating after the home inspection. They're getting the appraisal started. They're getting the mortgage started. They're not, like, we know a lot of lenders will say, well, get your home inspection done before we start, you know, the mortgage process, because we don't want to lose any time, you know, renegotiate, pay for inspection. So do you think that there would be a market to shift to go to seller inspections, or do you think sellers would just still see that as, you know, not their cost, and why would I do it? No? Okay.
I've had a few homes that, you know, I presented to the buyer that they already had, you know, their pre-inspection, and they don't trust it. They still want their own.
Okay.
That, and I think then, you know, from the sellers, if I'm representing a seller, I almost don't want them to do a pre-inspection, because then you have the duty of disclosure, right? So, you know, it's kind of like what we don't know won't hurt us.
So Leanne,
if somebody does waive the inspection, of course, if somebody does the inspection, then my sellers have to be reasonable about making repairs.
Right. So Leanne, on your go-to, a question came in from Ronald Mitchell-Tree in Newcastle, said, can the buyer still terminate after the home inspection and receive their earnest money back? Or how do you write your language that says, hey, you know, we're removing our home inspection, we're doing it for ourselves? What's
Well, I've never had to terminate, so I don't know. But from my understanding, as long as it's elected, then yes, they could get their hand money back.
Okay. All right. So as long as it's elected. Okay. That's fair.
Hoby,
All right. Yes.
just want to respond to that idea. In the Michigan market, we had one of the top agents in our marketplace had tried to do the pre-inspection, and it through their process, it just didn't work well here. So we went in the last few years, no one really does that because the buyers typically want the home inspection. So for our marketplace, it didn't work well.
Okay. Question that sort of around that same vein of the negotiation pieces, that Jerry talked about that bridge on the appraisal. Have you seen offers coming in that are that the buyer's removing their whole financing contingency, that they're comfortable, confident, they know they're in a good position. So they're, even if they're getting financing, they're shifting and saying, I'm a cash buyer, you know, like just totally, they still might be getting their mortgage from Howard Hanna. They feel comfortable, their terms, they feel comfortable in their pre-approval and their financial position, that they're coming in and saying, you know what, pull my mortgage contingency because I know this, I want the house and I don't want any, you know, pull my home inspection, pull my mortgage contingency, you know, make it as clean as possible. Have you seen anybody pull mortgage contingencies, or are people still a little bit leery to not have that safety net?
I've not seen that.
Okay.
I think only if they have, like I have a client that is borrowing money from parents to be able to buy cash, and then they'll refinance once they close.
Okay. Yep. All right. Is anybody seeing more of that? Because that's sometimes in a tight market, you see people, whether they take out of their 401k or they're, taking just proceeds from the house that they sold, or they're borrowing from parents to just win the day, get the house, and then come back and refinance later because of the rates.
Yeah.
You seeing that?
That and buy before you sell program. That's a great lead in for that too. Using that program if it benefits. But yeah, people are definitely getting creative.
And that's a good point, because I can't imagine anybody would accept an offer on a home sale contingency today, right? So are you using?
We've had a couple.
Really? Sorry, but if you're using the buy before you sell mortgage program, that eliminates that, having had that contingency. So are we seeing an uptick of that being used?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
Okay, you are, Jennifer, you are.
But yes.
Yeah. So Leanne,
I'm sorry, say that again.
I said, are you seeing the use of the buy before you sell mortgage more often?
Oh yes, for sure.
Okay. All right. That's good. All right. It's good. So, and that's a good tip also to explain to our sellers at a listing appointment, just to go back on this to increase your business. Oftentimes I think that we forget that the buy before you sell mortgage and money back guarantee and some of these things are actually great listing tools, because if you sit there with a seller and say, why should I list with you? Say, oh, by the way, our company's mortgage company has a buy before you sell mortgage. They might not care because they're not getting a mortgage, they're getting their house sold, but you're able to say, but here's where it's value. If a buyer comes in and they want a home sale contingency, I can counter back for them to talk to our mortgage company and use our buy before you sell, where they can pull equity out, and then you're not waiting for their home to sell. And so even in a buyer's market, even in a equalized market, explaining that to a seller as a why to them on a listing appointment is another tool to differentiate you on the listing versus everybody else in the sort of sea of sameness, if you're going to be a green penguin per se. So it's another tool that you can use that's out there. All right, in presenting offers. So okay, we've seen in your contracts, things you're removing, things you're changing, you're being creative. In presenting offers, let's go on the listing side, because it sort of shifts both ways, and we've had the discussion. And I know a big question is, as a seller's agent, as a listing agent, are you encouraging or seeing? I know the tradition has been, and I know this answer going into it to the panelists, but I thought it's one that we know agents have asked. On the listing side, it used to be that, offers were all presented face to face at the kitchen table at 9 o'clock at night, and, the drama of going into another room to call your buyer, or standing in the cold outside while the listing agent talked, with all the pomp and circumstance. And over time, we've moved away from that in-person presentation, part because of timing, because of technology, because of the ability to email your offer and then the listing agent represents it and shows it. But one thing I thought might happen, because I miss those days of the negotiation, that's just me. But the question is that with Zoom and technology, Curtis Newrider asked the question very early on, are you seeing more offers presented in person? Maybe not at the kitchen table, but back to, as you as a listing agent, Jenna Lee brings an offer on instead of Jenna Lee emailing me the contract and me representing it to Kate, the seller, saying, hey, Jenna Lee, do you want to present your offer, via Zoom or FaceTime or something to my seller? We can set it up from your home at 8 o'clock so you can best represent your terms rather than me. So as a listing agent, have you seen any change in that? Or is anybody doing that? I know the answers, but the panelist doesn't, so you can all just jump in and say, no, you're not, and why.
If I can jump in, I really loved the Zoom effect that has happened. Greg and I had a client, and they had 4 kids under the age of 5, and she was pregnant, and he works 7 days a week or 6 days a week. So we had to meet them on Zoom to do every presentation at 9:30 at night. And so I didn't do that before the pandemic, and I kind of like it. So whereas we, normally we'd email an offer and they look at them depending on how many we have. I really enjoy the virtual option of being able to go through this information with our sellers. I think it's become a huge benefit. In person depends. You got to customize it, right? So for people that are, because we have agents that are also compromised as well, and I try to talk to the Ann Arbor market prior to coming on, just to get a feel of what other people are doing. And I know some of them are unable to go in person and make those presentations.
Great. Anybody else with, I know the answer is no, but anybody want to express why, as representing your seller, you might not do that?
So I don't do that. And I think it would be, you know, with 7 or 8 offers on a house, I think it would be really difficult to have everybody present, every buyer's agent present their offer to my seller. As far as when I'm presenting the offers that have come in to my seller, I always put it in a spreadsheet, and it's very similar to the spreadsheet that I think Helen might have sent out a couple weeks ago. It's funny, I thought I made that up, and then I saw that come over and I was like, oh, I guess I didn't make it up. But I do put all the offers in a spreadsheet. I email it to my client, and then we go over it. Usually it's over the phone, but I do see value in doing it over a Zoom, just to be able to see them and again, build that. You're continuing to build trust and rapport if they can see you and you can see them.
So shift to the buyer side. Anybody feel differently are you using Zoom or FaceTime or anything else differently to represent the buyers on what you're doing there?
Yeah, I've tried to set up every first meeting with a buyer on Zoom. You know, it's that whole, especially if it's just a Zillow lead. I mean, they don't know, like, or trust me. So being able to see my face and my sincerity and be able to speak my experience is so valuable.
So we're sort of up against our end of time. This has been great with a lot of great feedback. I sort of like to close out with 2 questions that each person will answer, but one, and we'll go around. I'll start with Leanne and then end up back with Jerry, just because that's how you're on my screen. But one tip that your best advice for negotiating in this seller's market. The one thing you think is just your go-to, you want to reinforce to the panelists, and also one thing that, if there's one thing that the company can do to better help you in this market, would be great. So,
yeah. So I think as far as, you know, writing an offer, I think it's going to be you know, a significant amount of hand money down, the inspections to see if they're comfortable with that, you know, doing for informational purposes, and I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question?
Is there one thing that you could suggest that the company do to help you or other agents in this market?
No, I mean, I think that you've been great, and I think there's all the tools that you know, at our fingertips, and I think it's wonderful.
Great. Okay, Tracy.
I've had significant success with my listings, setting them up, whether the people need more time to get the house ready for market, but using the coming soon, and I had mentioned it last night, especially with COVID, to get as many buyers through the door on day one as possible. In every instance, we have gone over asking, had multiple offers. In presenting those multiple offers to the seller, I don't have buyers agents even asking to present, but I do feel that the sellers, they are relying on me to help navigate them through, even, you know, how do we look at these offers? Because it's not just looking at price, it's looking at all of the terms. And using the barrister's quick net sheets, I find that more helpful to be able to even show them an offer that also has an escalation clause, what that looks like compared to another offer that doesn't have the escalation, using that that ×3, where you can show them, you know, 3 different price scenarios in there. It definitely is helping them to make sense of all of these multiple offers.
Great. Thank you, Tracy. Jenna Lee.
I would say it would be set real expectations, use facts and data, and try to be the rock, try to stay non-emotional, because they are going to be emotional. And so you need to have your level head, and you have to be ready at all times to have your problem solving tape on.
And both Tracy and Jenny, anything that you can give me for the company that you need support with that we could address to help you in the market?
More listings. Just need more.
Thanks. I'm going to go out and work on that.
Okay.
All right. Jennifer?
I'll answer the second question first. I'm with Tracy, more listings.
Okay.
You know, it's talking through with your seller or with your buyer about what a negotiation is that at the end of the day, everybody has to give something and be happy at the end of the process. You do have to be that rock, as Jenna Lee said, where you have to be the calming influence in the whole situation and not the escalator, and just really write strong offers and present in a way that the seller understands what is being offered to them.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. And Jerry, last but not least, same two questions.
Yeah, I am excited to hear what Jennifer and Jenna Lee said about that, because I wonder how agents feel and participate in the negotiation process. And I learned a lot of this from my husband and sales and negotiation experience, and that is to keep out the drama. I'd have to believe that they even have a lower fall through rate. It's amazing the unnecessary things that agents bring into deals that they really don't need to, and how it can affect the outcome of that win-win that Tracy's talking about. Because true negotiation in real estate is win-win. And then in regards to the partnership that I have with Howard Hanna, I'm just so appreciative. You guys coming into this and being vocal and visual, and you know, and I'm really happy that our team supported Core Services, because and when you start to feel bad, whether it's through the pandemic or whatever, to have a surrounding team of support is just such a good feeling. And so I'm glad that we have that then, and I'm glad we have it now.
Right. Well, thank you all. And thank you, Kate, for organizing things. I'll just conclude with this, that a lot of great questions were on there, looking for scripting, looking for dialogue, and some referencing that will help you. Kate and the education team will pull that, and we'll pull it from different markets and share with everybody in the company via managers and so forth, so that if there's that question, look for that early next week. And then I would say that the other thing is just stay, as you heard the advice, stay calm and stay cool through these next few months. It will be exciting, but it will be, it's going to be crazy. And the more we can manage the process and keep everybody calm. And don't forget, your managers are there for you. I'm here for you. Everybody in the company is there. You're in that front line with the client and customer representing the company, but know you've got the support team and network behind you, no matter whom it is, to help you with things. So thank you all so much. I'll let you get back to this crazy market.
Hey, Hoby, before you let everyone go, I just
Yep.
wanted to answer the question. If everyone wants that Excel sheet, it's actually already on GoHanna. We uploaded it last week. It's under documents. If you just search navigating a seller's market, you'll find the Excel sheet that I think a lot of people asked for. So I just want to let everyone know it's already online for you.
And I also saw some questions about the home tour piece for customers, for buyers through Hanna presentations. It's in Hanna presentations. We'll make, Kate, if you can touch base with Kevin, we'll get something out to remind everybody from marketing where that is. So if it saw a bunch of questions referring where is that, we'll get that up. But all your questions, and the panelists, thank you for taking time both last night to prepare and review, and also this morning. I know you're all so busy with family and with business and everything else that's in front of you. So thank you for taking your time, and everybody stay cool this weekend, and both physically and literally with your clients. So thank you, everybody. It's great being with you. Bye-bye.
Thank
you. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.